We are in 11 honors, and we've just started reading today on page 16. And the question is, he says, "But I shall kill no albatross." Which poem, which was on yesterday's test, is that a reference to? You don't remember?
What does it say
It's page 16. I cannot describe. It's right there.
Page 6?
Oh,
We have different page numbers.
sorry.
Oh, it's page 6? Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay.
So where is it?
Where is it, Isabella?
It's like the... Oh, okay.
Which poem is that a reference to?
Ancient.
Thank you. I was getting to be really disappointed. Yeah, what was when we say an albatross now, what do we mean? It is an expression now. He has an albatross around his neck. Do you know what that means? A burden, some sort of burden or some sort of guilt, something he can't get rid of. And so, remember we said, what are his favorite poems? Well, Mary Shelley's favorite, and likewise, Walton's are The Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner and Paradise Lost, which you read last year. All of which are about men who do, out of their pride and ego, practically destroy themselves. Therefore, do not be alarmed for my safety, or if I should come back to you as worn and woeful as the ancient mariner. You will smile at my illusion, but I will disclose a secret. I have often attributed my attachment to my passion and enthusiasm for the dangerous mysteries of the ocean to that production of the most imaginative of modern poets. So the answer again to question number 7 is Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. He admits it here, but it's also true of Mary Shelley. There is something at work in my soul which I do not understand. I am practically industrious, painstaking, a workman to execute with perseverance and labor. But besides this, there is a love for the marvelous, a belief in the marvelous, intertwined in all my projects, which hurries me out of the common pathways of men, even to the wild sea and the unvisited regions I'm about to explore. But to return to dearer considerations, shall I meet you again after I have traversed immense seas and returned by the most southern cape of Africa or America, I dare not expect such success. Yet I cannot bear to look on the reverse of the picture. Continue in the present to write to me every opportunity. I may receive your letters on some occasions when I need them most to support my spirits. I love you very tenderly. Remember me with affection. You should never hear from me, should you never hear from me again, your affectionate brother, Robert Walton. When's the last time, can you remember the last time he wrote a letter and put in an envelope and wrote something on the envelope and licked a stamp? And you don't remember? Have you ever written a letter? You have, I'm sure, but you hadn't done it in a long time. You don't pay the bills in your house, I assume, either. And most people, I still pay bills by mailing them, and my son, he says, you gotta it's just so much easier, get it online, and so he's gonna help me do that. So even that will be missing, in my life. I mean, I don't write letters, I make phone calls and text, but I do, send letters, which are bills, but that will be soon over. So even getting mail at all might be a thing of the past. Do you know how, if you had somebody on board a ship in the middle of the ocean, how would you possibly communicate with them? You know how they would do it? They would actually send letters by a ship going in the same direction. And it's not as odd. Ships are constantly passing near each other. And whenever that happens, they come together. And there's a name for that I cannot recall right now, but there's a name for that meeting of two ships. And they exchange letters. Like, you're going to England? Here's some letters, please take to England. You've coming from England? Here's some letters, and the name of the ship and everything would be on there. So they could actually receive letters in the middle of the ocean if, they pass the ship going from that direction. Now communication is so easy, we take that for granted, that you'd have to wait for weeks and weeks to hear from somebody. I don't know how you will find out about college entrance and everything. They probably do all that by email, but I can imagine next year, sometime after November, most schools accept applications in November. So sometime in after Christmas, you'll probably get an email. I mean, think about that. A year from now, you're going to be very much involved in the college selection process. At least you have to think about it. But I can just remember waiting for the mail. Is it going to get in the mail? Now you're waiting for an email or something like that. Which one of y'all want to start? This is the next letter. We're getting to the point we're going to meet this Mr. Dr. Frankenstein. Why don't we start with Delaney?
How far do you want me to read?
You can read at least that. Well, I mean, you could read the whole letter. It just goes over to the next page.
I write a few lines in haste to say that I am safe and well advanced on my voyage. This letter will reach England by a merchantman now on his homeward voyage from
Archangel. See what he said? He sent it by ship headed to England. So that's how it works.
More fortunate than I, who may not see the native land perhaps for many years. I am, however, in a good spirits. My men are bold and apparently firm of purpose, nor do the floating sheets of ice that continually pass us, indicating the dangers of the region towards which we are advancing, appear to dismay them. We have already reached a very high latitude, but it is the height of the summer, and although not so warm as in England, the southern gales which blow us speedily towards those shores, which I also ardently desire to attain with rather a degree of reviving warmth which I had no expected. No incidents have
Heretofore.
heretofore befallen us that would make a figure in letter. One or two stiff gales in the springing of a leaf, or accidents of which experienced navigators scarcely remember to report. And I shall be well content if nothing worse happened to us during our voyage.
Forgive me if you read that word. I didn't at all pronounce it right. It's hitherto, not heretofore. So hitherto is what it says. Sorry. Adieu. That's French.
Adieu.
Yeah.
My dear Margaret, be assured that for my own sake as well as yours, I will not rashly encounter danger. I will be cool, persevering, and imprudent. But success shall crown my endeavors. Wherefore not? Thus far I have gone, tracing a secure way over the pathless seas, the very stars themselves being witnesses and testimonies of my triumph. Why not still proceed over the untamed yet obedient element? What can stop the determined heart and resolved will of man? My swelling heart involuntarily pours itself out thus. But I must finish. Heaven bless my beloved sister.
Okay, and this is the really most important letter and he meets Dr. Frankenstein. So Isabella.
So a strange accident has happened to us that I cannot forbear recording, although it is very probable that you will see me before these papers become in your possession. Last Monday we were nearly surrounded by ice, which closed in the ship on all sides, scarcely leaving her sea roof in which she floated. Our situation was somewhat dangerous, especially as we were compassed round by a very thick fog. We accordingly lay to, hoping that some change would take place in the atmosphere
what did he see? What did they all see?
A man with a sled.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Anything interesting about the man? He's really big. You have any idea who that might be? The monster. Yeah. This is very unlike any movie version I've ever seen. The original is very much unlike the movie version. I've never seen the movie version that took place where this does. Now, the story, a lot of the story takes place in Scotland and Switzerland, but at the same time, it starts here. So, you want to keep reading, or would you read a little more than Aurora?
This appearance excited our unqualified wonder. We were, as we believed, many hundred miles from the land, but this apparition seemed to denote that it was not, in reality, so distant as we had supposed. Shut in, however, by ice, it was impossible to follow his track, which we had observed with the greatest attention. After 2 hours after this occurrence, we heard the ground sea, and before night the ice broke and freed our ship. We, however, lay to until the morning, fearing to encounter in the dark those large loose masses which blow about after the breaking up of the ice. I profited of this time to rest for a few hours.
Yeah.
In the morning, however, as soon as it was light, I went upon deck and found all the sailors busy on one side of the vessel, apparently talking to someone in the sea. It was, in fact, a sledge, like that we had seen before, which had drifted towards us in the night on a large fragment of ice. Only one dog remained alive, but there was a human being within it, whom the sailors were persuaded to enter the vessel. He was not, as the other travelers seemed to be, a savage inhabitant of some undiscovered island, but a New European. When I appeared on deck, the master said, "Here is our captain, and he will not allow you to pursue on the open sea, perish on the open sea." On perceiving me, the stranger addressed me in English, although with a foreign accent. "Before I come on board your vessel," he said, "will you have the kindness to inform me whither you are bound?" You may conceive my astonishment on hearing such a question addressed to me from a man on the brink of destruction, and to whom I should have supposed that my vessel would have been a resource which he would not have exchanged for the most precious wealth the earth can afford. I replied, however, that we were on a voyage of discovery towards the northern pole. Upon hearing this, he appeared satisfied and consented to come on board. Good God, Margaret, if you had seen the man who thus
Capitulated.
capitulated for his safety, your surprise would have been boundless. His limbs were nearly frozen, and his body dreadfully emaciated by fatigue and suffering. I never saw a man in so wretched a condition. We attempted to carry him into the cabin, but as soon as he had quitted the fresh air, he fainted. We accordingly brought him back to the deck and restored him to animation by rubbing him with brandy and forcing him to swallow a small quantity. As soon as he showed signs of life, we wrapped him up in blankets and placed him near the chimney of the kitchen stove. By slow degrees he recovered, and ate a little soup which restored him more to.
2 days passed in this manner before he was able to speak, and I often feared that his sufferings had deprived him of understanding. When he had in some measure recovered, I removed him to my own cabin and attended to him as much as my duty would permit. I never saw a more interesting creature. His eyes have generally an expression of wildness and even madness, but there are moments when, if anyone performs an act of kindness to him, or does him any of the most trifling service, his whole countenance is lighted up, as it were, with a beam of benevolence and sweetness that I never saw equaled. But he is generally melancholy and despairing, and sometimes he gnashes his teeth as if impatient of a weight of woes that oppress him. So this kind of gives you an idea of his state of mind, physical and mental. When my guest was a little recovered, I had great trouble to keep off the men, who wished to ask him 1,000 questions, but I would not allow him to be tormented by their idle curiosity. In a state of body and mind whose restoration evidently depended upon entire repose, Once, however, the lieutenant asked why he had come so far upon the ice in so strange a vehicle. His countenance instantly assumed an aspect of the deepest gloom, and he replied, "To seek one who fled from me." "And did the man whom you pursued travel in the same fashion?" "Yes." "Then I fancy," who's talking here? Okay, lieutenant is talking to the guy. "Then I fancy we have seen him, for the day before we picked you up, we saw some dog drawing a sledge with a man in it across the ice. This aroused the stranger's attention, and he asked a multitude of questions concerning the route which the demon, as he called him, had pursued. Soon after, when he was alone with me, he said, 'I have doubtless excited your curiosity, as well as that of these good people, but you are too considerate to make inquiries. Certainly it would indeed be impertinent and inhuman in me to trouble you with any inquisitiveness of mine. And yet you rescued me from a strange and perilous situation. You have benevolently restored me to life.' Soon after this, he inquired if I thought that the breaking of the ice had destroyed the other sledge. I replied that I could not answer with any degree of certainty, for the ice had not broken until near midnight, and the traveler might have arrived at a place of safety before that time, but of this I could not judge. From this time, a new spirit of life animated the decaying frame of the stranger. He manifested the greatest eagerness to be upon deck, to watch for the sledge which had before appeared. But I have persuaded him to remain in his cabin, for he is far too weak to sustain the rawness of the atmosphere. I have promised that someone should watch for him and give him instant notice if any new object should appear in sight. Such is my journal of what relates to this strange occurrence up to the present day. The stranger has gradually improved in health, but is very silent and appears uneasy when anyone except myself enters the cabin. Yet his manners are so conciliating and gentle that the sailors are all interested in him, although they have had very little communication with him. For my own part, I began to love him as a brother, and his constant and deep grief fills me with sympathy and compassion. He must have been a noble creature in his better days.